Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today we are discussing a lovely Audemars Piguet Royal Oak automatic. It's the 14790ST. This is an early F-Series watch from the mid-2000s, and it's a timepiece that offers a ton of value for your Royal Oak money. So the timepiece you see right here is 36 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel, though it wears a bit larger. More on that in a moment. It is super thin, with one of the last of the Royal Oak monoblock cases, and that's 8.2 millimeters thick. If you measure just the case lug-to-lug dimension, then it's 46.2 millimeters. But if you measure these little plots, the end links, the incompressible rigid distance across the wrist is 49.5 millimeters. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see it wears well. To me, this isn't a 36 millimeter watch. This is more like a 38. It wears like a larger timepiece due to the integration of the case with the lugs and the lugs with the bracelet. So the presence, as with all Royal Oak and offshore models, is of a larger watch. However, it's super thin, easily sliding underneath the cuff. The watch is not as compact as you might think. I'd recommend it for a wrist of 14 centimeters circumference or up. A tiny lady who has a very small wrist is probably going to want an even smaller Royal Oak than this. Taking a quick look at the watch, it's beautifully made, as all of them are. The finishing on a Royal Oak is conspicuously external. A lot of watches have beautifully finished movements, and there's a JLC-based movement in here, but really what you're paying for is the finishing on the steel of the exterior. One of the reasons the Royal Oak has always been so expensive, despite the fact that most of them are in base metal, is the degree of attention to detail and manual finishing that goes into these facets. The break between satin and polish, the narrow band of satin alongside the polished flank of the bezel. You can see that we have this little expanding bevel on the end of the lugs that perfectly aligns across the shoulders of the links, and the fact that these little intermediate links are polished on their ends that are almost impossible to see until you start rolling the bracelet through the light. You can see the flanks of the links are vertically satin finished, and we have removable links fixed by screws here. You can see there's several removable links. And then we have a single fold AP logo style deployment clasp, so called because it is the AP logo. And then we have a single trigger release system, so you pull it to withdraw it to open up the clasp. So it's a pretty secure system, suitable for a light-duty sports watch. This is a watch that I would describe as a light-duty sports watch. It's not something that I would encourage you to necessarily take deep-sea diving, but it's a watch you can wear just about all the time, including in the shower, as long as its service paperwork is recent. It has a monoblock case and a screw-down crown. And let me explain what that means. That means the case, the mid-case and the case back, they can't be separated. They're machined out of a solid block of steel, and this is how the Royal Oak was originally constructed back in 1972. Over time, Audemars Piguet has phased out this case design in just about every version of the Royal Oak, from the mid-size to the jumbo to the full-size 41 millimeter models, and they did that to make the watch cheaper to build. So what you have here is something that is built with historical authenticity, as this is how the Royal Oak traditionally was made, but also with a little bit greater integrity, as less attention was paid to the cost of making the part. I should also mention that the bracelet by itself takes 9 to 11 hours to hand finish, so don't underestimate the time necessary to create these details. AP did things the right way back then. You could see that the bracelet is fixed to the case using screws and bars rather than pin sleeves, or I should say, rather than pin sleeves or spring bars. I've seen both on various watches of similar pricing that shall remain nameless. We have a screw-down hexagonal crown with the AP logo, and you can see that hexagonal form used for the bolts that surround the dial. They are white gold, and they are bolts, which is how they can be aligned in a circular pattern. Now you can also see that they are also still recessed in the bezel, which is one of those elements you want to look for to discern whether a Royal Oak bezel has been excessively refinished or worn. And you can see all of these still sit below the plane of the bezel. The bezel has satin, then polish, then satin across its top. And we have a blue Tapisserie dial. It is a hobnail. The blue is considered to be the rarest and the most desirable. Now, back when these were made, this watch, of course, with that F-Series serial number, the dial would have been made by Stern Frère, a Richemont company originally created by the Sterns, who went on to buy Patek Philippe, because the Sterns were originally dial makers And Patek was their biggest client, so they bought it out of bankruptcy to ensure they wouldn't lose its business. Well, over time, ownership of that company has transferred to Richemont, and right up until 2011, they still made the hobnail dials for Audemars Piguet. After 2012, AP made them, so this is a stern fair dial, and would have been cut on a 19th century pantograph mimicry lathe, and it creates a super fine texture. I don't know how well you could see this, but there's a lot going on this dial that's not just the large hobnails. And then it's galvanized blue, which at the time had a very high rejection rate. It wasn't really until the last 10 years that AP has reduced this to a science and made the blue easier to mass produce. We have white gold blob style indices and baton style hands. Do a quick loom shot here. Of course, this watch from the 2000s is well past the era of tritium dials, so you know this Luminova hands and dial, both original to the watch. You may wonder, why make the hands the logo and the indices gold? Well, they're made of white gold, so they won't tarnish or discolor over time. Steel components, even when rhodium plated, sometimes are a little bit more susceptible to changing color. Now we'll do a quick hacking seconds display there. So you can see the watch features hacking seconds. It also has an intermediate position where you can quick set the date. By the way, how much do you love the serif on that 3? It is a very serify font used there. Now, inside the case, underneath that solid monoblock case back, we have a JLC 899. These watches through the years 80s, 90s, and 2000s went through various versions of the JLC base automatic. And up until 2000, Audemars Piguet actually owned 40% of JLC. So the relationship between them, aside from the fact that they're historically associated and neighbors, the relationship was a very organic one. The 899 is an upgraded 889. The changes include ceramic rotor bearings rather than steel, a more efficient unidirectional winding system rather than bidirectional, and a more durable and precisely adjustable free-sprung balance. Tech specs, well, automatic winding, 38-hour power reserve, hacking seconds, quick set date, 32 joules, free-sprung balance, 8 beats per second. And it is very thin, fine, and hand-adjusted movement that is adjusted in 5 positions. It also includes a judicious blend of hand finishing and mechanical finishing that would be appropriate even on an AP manufacture movement. So, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this Audemars Piguet Royal Oak automatic.